3 years ago, a man proposed to a woman, promising to wait for her no matter how long it took. 3 years passed. Today he took out a diamond ring, asked the woman, "You have the best taste." She was reborn into a novel she had read before. "Gods, thank you for bringing him to me." However, she clearly hadn't realized the severity of the situation yet, still pretending to be innocent, but Adele mercilessly exposed her. She could see the wound wasn't serious at all, presumably when father arrived. She must have used some tricks to make him so angry, so she came today to give her one final warning if she didn't behave. Her fate would be as cruel as the flowers crushed in her hand. "Noel is still defied, you'll regret this." Adele smiled and countered, "You're the one who'll regret it if your wounds healed too quickly." But if the woman knew what was about to happen, perhaps she would regret not killing her sister now. To bring down her sister, the scheming sister was willing to betray the entire family, not only revealing business secrets to competitors, but also framing her own brother to ensure her plan's success. Because of this incident, she was confined and couldn't leave. But as her so-called best friend, Chloe wasn't worried about her at all. And because she couldn't learn more secrets, secretly cursed her as useless. But she had one more crucial point to check. "Do you like golden hair?" Just as the words fell, a knock came at the door. "Miss Chloe, are you in there?" The woman immediately fell silent, opening the door. It was actually Nola, unlike her previous disdainful attitude. Now her face was full of concern for her friend. "I heard you were hurt. Are you all right now?" Hearing this, Nola smiled slightly. "For my friend, these small injuries are nothing. I brought what you wanted." The reason she appeared here was to secretly deliver intelligence to Chloe. On the note was Adele's second bid for today's auction. Originally, this secret was only known to the woman and her assistant. However, last night, Nola used jealous feelings for her, claiming illness to keep him by her side. Thus, learning this secret, Jealous, completely unaware of this, was on his way to the auction house with Adele the next day, trying to speak well of his fiancée, hoping the woman would forgive him, but Adele didn't want to hear a word. She just suddenly became curious about how he fell in love with her sister in the first place. Was it just because she was beautiful? Jealous thought for a moment and said no. It was because whenever he came to the Earl's house on business, Nola was always alone, which made him feel pity for her. Like someone who looks like an angel. Before she could finish, the man interrupted her. Little did he know, she acted that way knowing it would work on him, but Adele couldn't be bothered to expose this, only warning him, "Since you've made your choice, see it through to the end." As they talked, they finally arrived at the venue. Reporters had been waiting there for a long time. Most people were convinced that she would win this deal. Adele was also full of confidence, but just as she was happily posing for news photos with reporters, Chloe passed by and secretly sized her up, thinking, "What's so special? She's not better than me. She could be beautiful on her own, but because of a man, she's trying to trip up another woman." Adele knew nothing about this, but whenever she met Chloe at the auction house, she would get a chilling feeling, especially when she put the note with her bid price into the auction house safe and then saw the woman. This feeling was particularly strong, but her instincts were right. After all, her sister, the mole, had already betrayed her. Chloe was determined to win this deal. Meanwhile, the woman faced constant troubles. Her husband, the captain, wasn't having an easy time at the temple either. First, Gilliel hates golden hair. Second, he believes there are no angels in this world. From the moment he left his wife, he already started missing her. Every minute and second after was torturous, yet he still had to deal with visitors from around the world. All this was due to the competition that ended his vacation early. Jillian's resentment was stronger than a ghost's. Then at this time, a man deliberately walked into the line of fire, proposing to compete with the captain. Initially, Jillian refused, but later, while drinking wine, learning it was sent by the Sergio family. The man suddenly revealed gossip about his multiple proposals to Adele. "I'd never seen someone so proud and beautiful, so I fell in love at first sight." Little did he know that this iceberg before him had already become the woman's territory. Jillian crushed his wine glass and declared he wanted to compete in something. "Then please pick up your sword, better yet. Why don't you all come at once?" The man thought it would take 10 seconds to deal with one person. At these words, Adele had no more hesitation. After finishing them all, he could go home to his wife, and his decision was indeed wise. In less than 2 minutes, all challengers were defeated. Faced with this merciless sweeping machine, the comparison was meaningless. But while he let Lucky heal everyone during the break, Jillian tried to sneak away again. The man promised he would return in 2 days before you became Archbishop. How did you manage to live in the temple? Unexpectedly, Jillian replied with determined eyes, that's because I wasn't married then. In public, he was the purest and kindest rabbit, but when dealing with enemies, he was extremely cunning and devious. Not only did he almost cost his brother his life, but to bring down his sister. He even colluded with outsiders to betray the family. Inside the bidding hall, Adele was confident about winning this deal. She looked serious and determined, let's get married. After all, her prepared 3.5 billion was an amount nobody else would have considered, but when the results were announced, she was stunned, Miss Chloe from the Duke of Orleans family. Winning bid 3.5 billion and 1 gold coins. At these words, the whole venue erupted because this amount was too suspicious. Adele couldn't believe this was mere coincidence. Muttering the Duchess's name, she suddenly seemed to realize something. So when the event ended, she actively approached the woman. Through clever conversation and some probing, she found her suspicions were correct. This cunning woman was indeed Chloe, the novel's protagonist, and according to the original story's plot, she had already conspired with her sister to do evil. However, she was the mastermind behind it all, while Nola was just a scapegoat. Although Madame Adele had been schemed against, what's done was done. She had to deal with this betrayal. She rushed back home, ignored her future brother-in-law's protests, and forcefully restrained the man, warning him not to interfere. To marry the man the woman promised. Whether you want gold, silver, jewels, or fame and fortune, she would definitely use her family's power to help him get everything you wanted. Then she went to Nola's room, seeing her just waking up contentedly. She grew angrier with one slap. She knocked her from the bed to the floor. Sister, how could you treat me like this? Nola still tried to feign innocence. The outcome was predictable only after her anger subsided slightly. Did Adele tell her this much? She didn't care about her previous misdeeds as they didn't affect her much. But this time, her actions had implicated the family's employees and their families. The losses could cause many people to lose their homes. This was Adele's bottom line. After all, the business group meant more than her life. Seemingly unaware the consequences were so serious, Nola covered her mouth in shock. The woman then grabbed a vase and threw it at her. Even cutting her sister into pieces wouldn't satisfy her anger now. The man was quite confused, they had just met once. But just as the punishment was halfway through, what are you doing? You don't know me, but Adele chattered on, listing everything she had learned about Jillial through his micro-expressions and details. If that's not enough, we can also get to know each other slowly as expected. Her father was the richest man and she became the count's daughter. The man rejected the woman's proposal. He wasn't pursuing love and knew Adele only needed to find someone suitable for marriage to inherit her fortune. Simply put, it would be a marriage of convenience, mutually beneficial, but Jillial still let the woman leave. Adele was disappointed. She knew this man wouldn't be easy, but didn't expect him to be so blind. She could only leave first, but watching her back, Jillial's expression showed cracks. The conditions the woman offered made him question his own beliefs. What am I really pursuing? At this time, Adele also turned back. She smiled over her shoulder. I'll pave a path of gold for you here. After all, using flowers is too cliché, this magnificent lady's pursuit involved throwing money around. Named Adele, Adele was very dedicated. She studied at least 20 hours every day. Unexpectedly, Jillial didn't waste time calling anyone but directly escorted Adele to her maid outside the church. Seeing her mistress, the maid quickly inquired. From behind, Jillial's polite voice sounded, the new moon is rising. Magical beasts will appear nearby. Let me escort you to the intersection. Such a cold and heartless young man, Adele thought to herself. She gave a curtsy, refused the man's kindness, and ran off with her maid. But after turning a corner, she came back since childhood. Her father taught her never to give up until achieving her goals. Moreover, if she couldn't bring him back after sending the woman away, Jillial's room was flooded with knights. Adele's appearance had stirred up the entire knight order. After all, she was royally beautiful. From generations of wealthy families, just holding hands and getting married would mean a life taking off. This directly won her father's favor. He specially groomed her as his future successor. Hearing their discussion, Jillial was surprised. He drove them out, but one comment made him hesitate for a moment. The man was a cold and proud holy knight who disliked women and only wanted to serve God, while the woman came from generations of wealth, believing in money, not God. So when the man first saw the woman, he felt their energies were incompatible and drove her from the church. But when he heard the knights discussing the roaming magical beasts and how dangerous the carriages were, Gilliel rushed out the door. His defenses seemed to start cracking, but before he could go far, he ran into the big sister leading 2 volunteers. The man's sixth sense compelled him to take a look. Her glossy black hair flowed gracefully in the air, then Adele greeted him with a radiant smile. We meet again, seeing the woman return. Gilliel said nothing and left. The maid cautiously asked beside her, "Are we really staying here?" Originally, Adele was gambling, but when she saw the man again, she was sure she had bet right. Someone who was always so cold actually showed a moment of wavering because of her. This discovery made her smile involuntarily. Rebecca, standing nearby, was unhappy. Perhaps this also led her to become too immersed in business, neglecting love. But was Nola really innocent? She disliked how Adele's eyes were full of desire, completely unsuitable for this solemn church, so after the mistress and maid left, she spoke ill of them before the high priestess, but at that time Adele was enthusiastically exploring around. Watching the young knights' beautiful figures on the training ground, we really came to the right place. "This is heaven." Just then, a voice sounded from behind. It was Renard, the vice-captain of the knights. He made no effort to hide his fondness for Adele, from praising her beauty to offering help whenever needed. Almost wanting to exchange contacts right away, but just as their conversation was heating up, Gilliel appeared, his expression ice-cold. "You seem very free. Is the training too easy?" Under the captain's pressure, Renard slipped away. Only the man and woman remained. Gilliel urged the woman to go home, saying there was no meaning in her staying here. He wouldn't change his mind or accept her, but Adele smiled gently and said, "You don't think I stayed to make you change your mind?" That night she knocked on Adele's door, looking pitiful. She immediately apologized. "I'm really sorry, sister. I never dreamed Brother Gil would like me. It's all my fault. If only you could forgive me." But before she could finish, Adele dismissed her and sent her away. "Do you?" Gilliel frowned upon hearing this. "Then why did you come back after just one meeting?" She had proposed to him. After being rejected, she changed her mind. "I must bring back a marriage partner." Actually, anyone will do. This move truly stunned him. He thought she stayed at the church to pursue him. Now it seemed he had overthought it as he left. His feelings were complicated, but after he left, the maid asked her mistress, "Have you really given up on the captain?" Adele smiled knowingly. One who has seen the sun wouldn't settle for a small star. This was just to lower his guard, attract his attention, make him think she had other targets, and use the chance to get closer. Unfortunately, she wasn't the only one after the handsome brother when assigning work. Rebecca led the mistress and maid to a small house. No one knew better than her what kind of person Nola was at this moment. Pointing at mountains of plates, "Please finish washing these today." Rebecca's targeting of Adele was completely undisguised. She disliked this woman's flamboyance and hated how she had her eyes on the captain. So her goal was clear: make things difficult for Adele until she leaves voluntarily. Adele saw through Rebecca's intentions but said nothing. She just smiled and accepted the dishwashing task. She didn't get angry. Understanding why Rebecca was upset, besides causing conflicts with people here, wouldn't help her find a husband, so Adele tied up her hair, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work until evening came. The usually empty dining hall was unusually packed today. Clearly, the knight's desire to glimpse the maiden's beauty was very strong. At this time, Gilliel's figure appeared among the crowd. Unlike the knights who wanted to approach Adele, the low pressure around him seemed to warn Adele, "Stay away from my knights." But as dinner was almost over, the woman still hadn't appeared. The high priestess asked Rebecca, "Why hasn't Miss Adele come?" There was suddenly movement outside the window. A man with black hair and red eyes climbed in. He was sister's closest confidant. Rebecca first glanced secretly at Gilliel, then innocently said, "The work I assigned wasn't difficult. Maybe she's just taking longer because she's not used to manual labor. Besides, the young lady might be deliberately staying away. After all, she grew up in luxury. How could she stomach such plain food?" Hearing this, Gilliel stood up to leave. Suddenly, a bright voice rang out. He stopped in his tracks. "Paving roads with gold for men I just met, making waterfalls of red wine at home. Yet this wealthy young lady is carrying a plate of potatoes. Could you please make some room there?" Rebecca's face was now full of panic. First, because her gossip was overheard by its subject. Second, she couldn't believe that 400 or 500 plates were washed by Adele in just 2 or 3 hours. Upon seeing the woman, Gilliel, who was about to leave, returned to his seat. Faced with the woman's questioning look, he said calmly, "I'm not full yet. Adele laughed inside, knowing he was clearly there to guard against her, plotting against the knights. Whenever Sister frowned, his expression would change along with hers. Little did he know he was the real prey, but she wasn't in the mood to talk now. She peeled a boiled potato, took a bite, and was almost flying with joy. Heaven knows she was starving. Meanwhile, Rebecca had recovered from her earlier panic. You don't have to force yourself to eat these. We all know you're from a noble family. How could you possibly like this food? Adele thought. She's really asking for it, so she first scolded Rebecca for speaking ill of potatoes, saying every grain of food is precious, but then responded to her earlier comments. The wine waterfall at my homes. That was to boost the wine market's development, the fruits grown in our villa. That was to cultivate better varieties in greenhouses, to sell to the public at low prices. As a great family, we have a responsibility to bring a better life to the Southern people. Every word Adele spoke flaunted her wealth, yet seemed to mock Rebecca as someone who hadn't seen the world. Indeed, under absolute wealth supremacy, Rebecca became furious with embarrassment, seeing Adele stand up. Should I eliminate him for you? Just say the word and I'll kill him. Renard asked if she was full. The woman smiled. I wanted some bread, but I came too late, it's all gone. As soon as she spoke, bread was offered from all directions. Adele didn't take any. Just said she'd try to come earlier next time and left. Jaleel hadn't said a word throughout, but watching the woman's back, he suddenly felt the lively dining hall became empty in an instant. The high priestess noticed his oddness and asked what was wrong. Jaleel lied, nothing, just feels too noisy. But the high priestess pointed at the bread in his hand. Then who was that bread for? He had never met such a woman in his life, so vulgar, luxurious, yet shameless on the outside, proposing marriage after just one meeting, yet he couldn't help thinking about her. I must be crazy. Jaleel knew the woman wasn't suitable for him, and her presence was very disadvantageous to him, but his peaceful life had unknowingly been stirred into ripples. Otherwise, why when Adele said she wanted bread, did he inexplicably have bread in his hand as if waiting to be given? Such emotional changes frightened Jaleel. Can you help me see if Nola would like this one? Previously. Before obtaining that thing, he couldn't have any distractions, so putting on his coat, he counted down in his heart, 13 days until the bishop returns. During this time, no matter what she says. How much laughter is in her eyes? He must. The rustling of bushes interrupted his thoughts. He saw Adele holding a candle, muttering complaints to herself. When she turned and saw Jaleel, she was first surprised. Then after recovering, seeing his sleeves wet from the waterfall, she silently thanked Rebecca for the assist. If not for after dinner, when that girl checked her washed dishes and couldn't find any fault. She wouldn't have sent her out late at night to collect branches for making dishwashing tools. And this chance encounter wouldn't have happened, but she nervously explained everything was coincidental. Unexpectedly, the man just stared at her silently, until after a long while. Don't you know there are magical beasts here? Why are you so persistent? When Adele was publicly insulted, the next day that person lost an arm. At this moment, Adele put away her playful expression. She told Jaleel, everyone has difficulties others can't understand. What you can't comprehend is about my life's goals. For this goal, let alone cutting branches or moving mountains. I'll do anything. In the moonlight, the woman's unwavering determination shone like a beam, seemingly touching the man's heart. He took the bamboo basket from her hands, holding it close. Let's go, didn't you say it's late and you need to return? Adele was stunned for a moment, then couldn't help saying, if you act like this, I might misunderstand. But as Jaleel turned, he showed a barely noticeable smile. Then you may misunderstand the pure and innocent boy and the domineering. Devoted younger brother, the woman had both of them in her heart simultaneously. The usually unapproachable holy knight in the moonlight rarely showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. This was Cadden, her Yandir half-brother. She still remembered their first meeting. Adele thought her eyes were playing tricks, wanting to get closer for a better look. Suddenly Jaleel accelerated and ran away afterwards. Whenever she got close, the man would speed up. They returned to the church this way. Looking at the now cold-faced man, she was certain that she hadn't mistaken the smile. When saying goodbye, Adele told him to return early and reminded him to be careful on the way. Jaleel immediately asked, are you worried about me? Unexpectedly, the woman laughed compared to dangerous beasts. I see more dangerous, don't I? This direct hit left the man stunned, but Adele flirted and ran, leaving the man to ponder by himself. In the following days, Rebecca tried hard to find fault with the woman but couldn't find anything at all, now in the church, except for him. Everyone praised Adele highly. How could they drive her away? Suddenly glancing at Jilliel beside him, he was relieved that at least the captain was wise and hadn't been bewitched by the bad woman's beauty. He was covered in blood, held in the butler's arms. His first words to Adele were, "Please don't kill me." He also took the chance to complain that as God's follower, her behavior was too frivolous. Jilliel watched the woman surrounded by knights. Indeed very flirtatious, they must all be crazy. Rebecca suggested that with such a dangerous person, someone should go monitor her together. He thought of Middle, but Jilliel said that person was too indecisive. How about brave Rena? They looked at little Rena wagging her tail before the woman, disappointing. Then no matter who Rebecca suggested, Jilliel righteously rejected them all until finally he reluctantly said there's no choice. I'll have to monitor her myself. Rebecca was deeply moved hearing this. Looking up at the man's profile, he thought to himself, oh my, this man is so reliable. Adele, unaware of this, was worried about the letter from home the next day. Her brother, Cadden, having not received her letters for too long, went mad, loving no one but his sister. I'm not interested in money or inheritance. Looking at the weak boy, Adele felt compassion. He even blew up the bridge their father needed to return home, just because his beloved sister said she needed him. So even when rockslide debris cut his face, Cadden was just happy it was over and he could see his sister again. However, when the attendant handed him the family letter, seeing the family seal on it, Cadden was displeased. Why hasn't Big Sister replied to me? The perceptive young man noticed the last 3 letters weren't written by his sister. He couldn't help but worry if something had happened to her. The attendant explained that the young lady might be too busy. And if anything happened, young Master Gerald would surely tell him immediately. Cadden didn't believe this, saying no matter how busy she would definitely write at least a line or two herself because she understood him well. And the second half of that sentence was, without news from her, I would go insane, unfortunately. Adele was truly busy now. Busy pursuing Cadden's future brother-in-law since Jilliel volunteered to monitor her. She not only named him Cadden, but protected him until he grew up, until he took over the family's underground business. His first action was to change her position. The original dishwashing and potato peeling work wasn't suitable, so he carefully selected a job taking care of children. The reason was it would minimize contact with knights and wouldn't be too tiring. But he overlooked one issue. Children sent to the church by their families were all somewhat mischievous, especially one particular boy who was very arrogant. Relying on being a count's son and his mother's only child, pointing at Adele, he roared, "Why should I listen to you?" The woman's expression immediately changed. "Don't point your finger at me or I'll break it, child." Being just a child, he was immediately intimidated. He wasn't actually bad by nature, just overly spoiled at home. Watching his panicked departure, Adele couldn't help but think of Cain, wondering how he was doing now. The man was a beloved ice prince, but he didn't care for women. Yet a woman whose smile could enchant people appeared and broke all his principles. Secretly eliminating those who only cared about money, now hearing about his sister being betrayed, the color in his pupils darkened. Adele hurriedly spoke, "You're not allowed to act recklessly, I still have use for him." Jilliel didn't like noisy environments, but when Adele brought children to watch training and the captain wanted to send them away, he stopped such action. No need, I don't mind, to encourage the troublesome child to study well. She changed his genius image to that of a former troublemaker. When faced with children's questions, Jilliel didn't expose the woman's lie. Even during group prayers, he deliberately chose to stand beside her. Is anyone here? Adele kept her distance from him. After all, Rebecca nearby was watching him intently. As soon as the man sat down, she said, I know you hate me. That's why you assigned me to watch the children, right? Jilliel felt wronged. Cadden smiled wickedly, preparing to climb out the window, but before leaving, he asked his sister about that bad woman Nola. He truly thought that job would be easy and relaxing, but this time he didn't hide his true feelings. I didn't assign you there because before he could finish, Rebecca at the podium called Adele to come up front. Specifically for him, the woman smiled outwardly but internally panicked. How does it go? Think, then a deep voice rang out. If you show your true self again, someone will surely love you. At some point, Jilliel had stood beside her, quietly covering for her. Just as the ice seemed about to melt, a letter from the Archbishop arrived stating he would reach the church in 2 days. Unlike his initial anticipation, Jilliel now felt a surge of disappointment. Michael watched the children playing outside. Inside, their joy won't last long. Miss Adele will soon be restored. Hearing this, Gilliel suddenly realized he had almost forgotten why she came here to find a husband and marry. How long do you plan to keep her around? Adele fell silent, having read the novel thoroughly. Michael continued talking to himself, saying Leonard keeps approaching Miss Adele lately, surely trying to win her heart. Hearing this, Gilliel couldn't sit still and ran out. Sure enough, he found the two chatting happily at the training ground. Seeing her laugh with another man, he felt inexplicably annoyed, learning that the other man was showing off. Demonstrating sword movements, Gilliel immediately waved his sleeve and instantly the tree before him fell. Amidst the rising dust, his expression remained unchanged. Is this the kind of demonstration you mean? He then lectured Leonard. If you're demonstrating, do it properly. Live up to those who trust and give you chances. Little Leonard felt upset at being upstaged. Just then, children swarmed around and called him away. When only the two remained, Gilliel began lecturing Adele as a merchant guild heir. You should be more careful in judging people. Leonard isn't suitable to guide children's training. How could she not know Noel's villainous character setting? The woman was confused and about to respond, but the wind was too strong, messing up her hair. Noticing this, the man immediately turned around. Gilliel blocked the wind, standing in front of Adele with a melancholy expression. He finally said those words, I assigned you here not because I hate you, although it's not that I've fallen for you, with Adele's keen sensitivity and attention to detail. This simple explanation, along with him sitting next to her during prayer earlier, revealed the subtle changes in the man's feelings towards her. She realized she was just one step away from completely winning Gilliel over. While preparing dinner later, Adele noticed something. Their merchant guild alone had donated considerable money to the church, yet why were they eating nothing but potatoes every day? And they were of very poor quality too, so that evening she and her maid split up on two missions. The maid was instructed to find someone. While Adele went to see Rebecca to address the food quality issue, Rebecca became angry immediately. Are you suggesting I'm embezzling church funds? The woman froze in place. Nola was his sister, so this man who grew up with her as childhood sweethearts. But she didn't want to bother too much with someone who was destined to die. In the original story, Noel was actually the female lead, unfortunately. You're slandering me to win the man's heart. She was willing to feed herself to monsters for dinner. Only then would the man feel guilty and his feelings for her would deepen. After all, being penniless and driven out by him, only to later discover it was all a misunderstanding. Even the coldest ice mountain would melt. For this, Adele carefully set up a plan. She sent her maid to find the upright captain while she went to Rebecca, pointing out the discrepancy between food quality and expenses, suggesting they confront the supplier together. She actually trusted Rebecca's character, though prone to personal grudges. She would never harm the church's interests. The supplier must have deceived her. Everything went according to plan, even when she demanded the supplier repay the stolen money. And the man claimed he couldn't immediately. It was all expected, so she threw down a stack of money. Her overly virtuous nature displeased the readers who were used to power fantasies. They forced the author to change her into a vicious supporting character. Consider it a loan from me, but from tomorrow on you must supply properly. In this scene was witnessed by Michael as planned. The next day, while everyone was surprised by the suddenly improved meals, Michael found the commander. There's something about Miss Adele that I feel I should report to you later. Gilliel called the woman for a talk. With a questioning tone, he asked where she went last night and what she did, according to Adele's planned scenario. The man before her should now believe she bribed the supplier, which was why their meals had improved. At this point, the woman only needed to avoid explaining, and tell the man with a disappointed expression, if you don't trust me, anything I say would be futile. In that case, I'll leave on my own. Congratulations, your life can return to peace now. After saying this, the woman turned to leave. Gilliel's hand hung in midair, reaching out. He wanted to hold on to her despite everything. He had only wanted to be a holy knight, but this woman's appearance shattered his peaceful solitude. Miss Adele, please wait. Hearing the man's call, the woman turned back pretentiously. Finally, he's here, though a bit later than expected. The final ending was her tragic death at age 20. Adele, focused on her goals, had been somewhat lenient with her, wanting to let her live well until 20, but at the family's regular banquet the next day, unexpectedly. Then she deliberately showed her beautiful left profile. Asking, did you come looking for me? Did Rebecca say something? I repeatedly told her not to. In her plan, after the man drove her away, Rebecca, known the truth, would surely feel indebted to her and tell the man the truth. Then Giglio, understanding everything, whether out of guilt or responsibility, would definitely come after her. This strategic retreat, creating misunderstanding to deepen feelings, she played it perfectly. However, for a moment she hesitated. What if he really takes my hand? What should I do? But she miscalculated. I won't listen to her. No matter what she says, it won't change the facts. I'm here to bring you back, and I won't seek anyone's permission. Nola appeared hand in hand with her new loves. Adele stood frozen in place. What she didn't know was that after she left, the bishop had returned to the church after briefly learning about the bribery incident. He kept Giglio behind. The bishop, well-versed in matters of love, saw right through the man's current distracted state. He used various subtle words to provoke the man, aiming to help this peer. Love innocent boy realized that a girl had already taken residence in his heart upon realizing his feelings. Giglio immediately bid farewell to the bishop. Perhaps from the first moment he saw a doubt, she had taken root in his heart, but he carried too many burdens, so he chose to ignore these feelings. But thinking about losing her forever, he couldn't accept it actually before leaving. Rebecca did find him and explained how everyone had misunderstood Adele. But the man wouldn't listen and rushed to chase after his love. He gave a reasonable explanation for his pursuit. How can you just leave like this? Have you forgotten about marrying me to inherit the fortune and become wealthy? The guests were instantly stunned. The man who had publicly courted her sister, now openly holding hands with the younger sister at the banquet. She had painstakingly chased the man for 3 blocks, begging him to marry her. At first, the man refused, but just as she was leaving, he regretted it. That little star who didn't understand love had already fallen for this mischievous woman full of schemes. So now, holding her hand, let me stay by your side from now on. Such a pure request for love, Adele wanted to laugh. After all, she had worked so hard to get this man, but she covered her mouth. Trying to hold back, she couldn't appear too excited, noticing her emotional change. Giglio said softly, "It's okay, you can laugh, you should be happy. Because you said this marriage would be life-changing for you. I'd be disappointed if you didn't smile." The air was thick with gossip. The man who had always been the epitome of abstinence, suddenly speaking so intimately, was a bit too much for the woman to handle, so she showed him the little fox she had found, trying to change the subject unexpectedly. Giglio gripped his sword at his waist, sensing danger. Adele immediately hugged the little fox tightly. You can't hurt him. Now the man was in a dilemma, though you wanted to say it was dangerous. He couldn't resist her fondness for it. He had to swallow his words. As long as he was there, he would protect her. Later, they returned to the church. After meeting the bishop, they could return home to meet their parents and hold the engagement ceremony. Here we must mention the protagonist's clever scheme. Upon seeing the bishop, he immediately knelt down. Adele didn't want to be the center of gossip, so she went to the balcony for some air. I hope our marriage can receive your blessing. Unlike Adele's plan to get engaged first, he directly announced to everyone that today, under God's witness, they would promise to be together forever. The bishop was very impressed. He told Adele once they decided to join hands, there was no turning back. Marriage is sacred. No matter what difficulties arise in the future or unexpected events, they must learn to endure. These words sounded strange to the woman, as if hinting at something. Could Giglio have some defect? That shouldn't be possible. She had personally verified everything. His position and character were excellent. Surely it couldn't be that kind of problem. The younger brother loved his sister, but now she was marrying another man. This bad man directly pulled the woman to swear before God. If either of us betrays this sacred union, I shall atone with my life. But Nola followed closely behind. Sister, I'm sorry. These words startled Adele. In her view, their marriage was just a contract. How did it become a matter of life and death? She stood there nervously, not daring to speak. After making his vow, Giglio carefully helped her up. At this moment, the bishop stared at her intently, asked if she had anything to add to the vow, seeing that she had to say something. The woman had to promise in her family's name that from now on, no matter what, I will ensure this noble commander beside me will have everything he desires for life and never let him suffer any hardship. This back and forth I watched in amazement. The woman schemed to get the man to marry her. The man schemed to bind her for life and death. As soon as they left the room, Adele started complaining. How could the bishop not give any warning before doing that suddenly? The man leaned close and asked, doing what suddenly faced with the sudden closeness. Adele quickly stepped back, explaining she was just startled by the blessing ceremony. What she really meant was, she worried such things weren't appropriate and might cause serious problems. Later, Jillian went to bid farewell to the bishop while Adele waited in the carriage returning to town. I told Brother Gil we should enter separately, but he insisted on coming together. Upon seeing the man, the bishop asked if he was satisfied with his gift, implying, I specially bound you two to prevent that cunning woman from escaping. You should thank me quickly. So the earlier vow was a double-edged sword, whether blessing or curse depends on the parties involved, and if they can keep their lifelong promise. However, what the bishop really wanted to remind Jillian was, the royal family would soon learn of their affair. At that time, but the man didn't mind, he didn't care. But what the bishop meant was, if Miss Adele knew that he was actually a lost prince, that little fox was. Everyone says he's the abstinent handsome brother, but when he takes initiative, his kisses could make your lips swell. Once he set on a woman, he would never let go no matter what, but comparatively, Adele still naively thought. Their relationship was just a business arrangement. The man agreed to marry her because she played her cards well, so on the way back, she held the little fox, wanting to use this time to quickly coach the man. After all, once they went down the mountain to her home and met her father, she worried Jillian might not handle it well. Although the man was dignified and the knight's commander, likely wouldn't be looked down upon anywhere. But being the man by her side was still challenging because she owned too much wealth. Everyone would think he approached her for money and wouldn't respect him. This man of ordinary appearance had moved between the two sisters. Moreover, her father wasn't easily fooled. At this moment, the little fox in her arms poked out its head. Jillian asked curiously, have you always liked small animals this much? Adele said no, but for some reason, when she saw this little one, she couldn't bear to leave him behind. There was a mystery left here earlier, hinting at what the fox didn't understand. Actually, this was a sealed person who possessed something Jillian had long been seeking. Suddenly, Adele realized she hadn't named him yet. The man didn't hesitate at all. Banlu suits him best. The woman thought the name was too plain, but she still called out Banlu while holding the little fox. In fact, in those eyes, she seemed to see. Suddenly, Jillian took the little one away. You're always holding him. Who had pursued her intensely and said he would always wait for her, was now transferring his affections to propose to her sister. 3 years ago, he proposed to the elder sister, solemnly promising to make her his wife. You'll spoil him. Education should come first initially. Scenes all need to be in charge of education when we have children. These words made me blush. Soon they entered the city. They would arrive shortly at the count's mansion. Adele put up her hair, reached out her hand. Now let me show you my battlefields. After arriving home, she put away her smile. First, she got recent house news from the butler, then asked when her father would return. Finally, to everyone's surprise, she walked into the same room with Jillian. First time visiting his girlfriend's home, he went straight into her room. Outside, he was the celibate holy knight who disliked women, but with her, he was steady as can be. For instance, Adele asked if he really wasn't interested in sweets. They're fragrant and sweet, just being near them can make one lose reason. The man heard this and moved closer. I'm very interested. How could I not like things that are fragrant and sweet? Now he was attending the banquet holding the younger sister's hand, but the elder sister was very generous. The sweetness in his eyes was almost sickening, but the woman was as straight as a ruler. Completely missing his meaning, she instead put down her teacup, asking him to come a bit closer. Jillian suddenly stopped and asked what she wanted to do. Adele explained that her father had sharp eyes. If they kept such distance as a couple, they would likely be suspected. Before she could finish, the man moved closer to her. Like this, you can hold my arm. Adele was very satisfied with his response. Choosing him for marriage was indeed right. Jillian was handsome, righteous, smart, and understanding. Just then, a maid announced the count had returned. Adele tried to withdraw her hand, but was held back. You don't need to hide. Have you forgotten you're my fiancé now? These words made the woman's heart skip a beat. Right, he was supposed to protect her, yet she panicked first. So she reminded him again that her father wasn't easy to deal with. She wasn't angry, she even blessed the contemptible couple before her. After all, her sister wouldn't live long besides. She wanted to say more, but the door was suddenly pushed open. Find out who destroyed that bridge, I'll tear them to pieces. Hearing the man's voice, Adele immediately let go of Jillian's arm, turned around and changed her demeanor. Good evening, father, you're finally back. Why are you back so late? The Count was angry. It was all because someone blew up the bridge he had to cross. He wanted Cadden to cook that person alive. Adele smiled without saying a word. She couldn't let brother Cadden cook her in an iron pot. Her father asked, "Where's Gel?" He brought many engagement gifts back, just waiting to arrange the ceremony for you two. But instead of seeing Gel, he saw an unfamiliar face. "Greetings, Count Sergio." The old father stared at the man, silent for 3 seconds, "Though I know you take after me." Her dream was to inherit the business and become wealthy. Although she grew up with the man, if he and her sister truly loved each other, better to let them be and free herself. "I didn't expect you to cheat so quickly." He just took one look at the man and was captivated by his appearance. He instantly forgave his precious daughter's infidelity because this man was extraordinary. "I am Jillian and I will be Lady Adele's first and last fiancée." Though the old father was confused, as his daughter had a different suitor before he left and now it had changed. He didn't give his daughter a chance to explain. He immediately agreed to the change in engagement, getting such easy approval from her cunning and profit-driven father. Adele couldn't quite believe it, so even though her father had left long ago, she still stood there dumbfounded until Jillian reminded her, everything's settled. "Let's sit down for tea." Since they're father and daughter, if she could fall for him at first sight, why couldn't her father? "Perhaps your father-in-law is quite satisfied with me." The woman couldn't argue with that, she could only say, "Yes, yes, yes." Then the man raised his doubt about what your father said about cheating. Adele thoughtfully considered her sister's feelings. "When father returns, I'll explain everything to him," but blinded by confidence. Adele immediately stated that she despised such behavior. Once married, one must be responsible till the end, though dreaming of pure love is foolish, because rather than love, most people think career and family are more important, but unless absolutely necessary. "I won't divorce." The first half was acceptable, but the word divorce stung his spine. However, he didn't show it, only saying, "As long as you're not fickle-minded, it's fine because I'm not a philanderer either." His eyes were glowing, but the woman's eyes were reflecting light. Just as the atmosphere became awkward, suddenly the man stood up, saying the Count wanted to speak with him privately. Adele panicked. She wanted to go too, afraid her father would give him a hard time, but Jillian reassured her while adjusting her collar and flirting. "How do you look so good in everything you wear?" His compliment instantly made her blush. She let him leave, but as soon as he left, she regretted it. She didn't notice her sister Noel's sympathetic gaze. Adele let down her bun and asked her maid to bring something. After her sister stole her fiancé, to keep her position as family head, she had to quickly find a husband unexpectedly. Her random choice turned out to be a jackpot. The man appeared cold and ascetic on the surface, but was actually cunning and charming. He even easily won over her shrewd father. However, her father, who seemed dazzled by beauty, actually had his own considerations. "Sitting with someone as beautiful as you reminds me of a legend. Once there was a lady from a northern family who had beautiful silver hair like an elf. Even the emperor fell in love at first sight." Speaking this, he turned to Jillian. "That lady like you believed in session." At this point, the Count's meaning was clear. "I already know your true identity, let's stop pretending." He actually just wanted to know one thing. She also ignored how the noble ladies who once surrounded her had all flocked to her sister's side, until a man appeared. Why would someone as cold as Jillian be interested in his precious daughter? Was there some ulterior motive? Without hesitation, the man replied, "Because Adele is worth it." This simple answer touched the Count's heart. After all, as a father, no matter who his daughter brought home, he would never be satisfied. Even if it was the future ruler of the empire, the reason he agreed to this marriage without question was thinking that since no one could meet his standards, better choose someone who truly cares for her. But he also knew that being with Jillian, Adele would face great risks. So to ensure safety, the Count proposed creating a false identity for Jillian. The man was puzzled. "Doing this, you won't be able to connect with the royal family nor gain great power." "Isn't that a loss?" The Count laughed. He never made losing deals. Having his daughter get the man she wants was pure profit, but if you really asked him, did he want Adele to become the most noble woman in the empire? He was Adele's cousin, the cousin asked teasingly, "So you can't get married now, huh?" "If I say yes, what would you do?" Just as Jillian was about to answer, suddenly a graceful figure appeared at the door. He was stunned. Adele appeared wearing a red dress. Like a beautifully blooming red rose, his heart was once again disturbed. When the cold, ascetic little prince met the captivating red rose, His previous composure completely vanished, leaving only the chaos of a heart and love. The Count observed his reaction and found his answer. It seemed he could safely entrust his daughter to him. Adele didn't know that her red dress had such a devastating effect on Jillian. She thought he was drunk and complained about her father, who would pour strong liquor to someone they just met. The Count calmly invited him to taste together. But surely you know the heir must be married. This news struck like lightning from a clear sky. The sweet and strong fragrant liquor slid from tongue to throat. Adele covered her mouth in amazement. Such good wine. They should sign an exclusive distribution contract, but she underestimated her father. Why sign a contract? Just buy that piece of land outright. Adele smiled, thinking as expected of my father. She continued asking for more wine. The Count warned from aside, this wine's sweet taste will lower your guard, making you drunk without realizing. But before he finished his last words, halfway through the fifth glass, Adele was already feeling dizzy seeing this. Jillian forcefully took her glass. Please don't drink anymore. Then he drank the remaining wine in one gulp. Seeing his lips touch where hers had been, Adele blushed. When she came to her senses, she found her father had quietly left. I guess he didn't want to watch their lovey-dovey. However, they weren't alone for even a minute. Oh, my sister, you're back. Adele smiled on the surface but cursed inside. Why did she have to run into the green tea bitch now? The girl's fake concern made her want to vomit. More importantly, she worried Jillian might be deceived by Noel's angelic face, not seeing the schemes behind her smile. Before the banquet even ended, Adele found the butler, demanding why she'd never heard of this rule. Little did she know, in the man's eyes, the green tea girl was completely irrelevant. He was more concerned about the man beside her, presumably Adele's former fiancé candidate. Thinking this, he felt jealous, so during self-introduction, he deliberately emphasized being the current fiancé's attendant. Hearing this, the two were shocked, especially Noel. That's impossible. Sister never mentioned this to me, Adele retorted. I never heard before either about you and Jera's becoming that kind of relationship. The sister who stole her fiancé couldn't accept her sister finding a new husband, and tried using low-level green tea tactics to drive a wedge between the sister and brother-in-law. First, she hinted that her sister was rushing into marriage without true feelings, then implied he had a bad character, unworthy of trust. Finally, she portrayed herself as a peace ambassador, saying it was all for her sister's good, a perfect escape, but unexpectedly, these little tricks meant nothing to her sister. Yes, he is rushing to marry, but describing him as just having a bad character is too simple. He's also malicious. When the maid learned of this news, she angrily denounced him as a scumbag and wanted to call the second young lady over for a confrontation, but after a brief moment of disappointment. Perhaps everyone assumed, since Adele was both talented and legitimate and excelled in ability. Sometimes when he meets someone he dislikes, he might make them bleed on the spot. Nola was intimidated by her sister's words, but actually by this point Adele was nearly at her limit. Under the influence of alcohol, her consciousness was becoming fuzzy. However, the green tea girl noticed this weakness, so she counterattacked. Sister is drinking to drown her sorrows, hastily finding a husband in a moment of impulse. Seeing this, Adele tried to think of a response, but her body was too weak and about to collapse. But at that moment, don't worry, my fiancé isn't such an impulsive person. I'm the impulsive one. Jillian embraced his wife's waist from behind and gave a reasonable explanation for her drinking. Just because I was beside you, you lost control and drank so much. Ignoring the surprised looks from the two beside them and Adele's confused reaction, he picked her up princess style. Winning the Count's favor, even if she needed a political marriage upon coming of age, wasn't there still young Master Gil? Let's go back to our room. Leaning against his broad, warm chest, Adele was like a contented cat, letting the man take her away. Afterward, she thanked Jillian, not only for helping her when she almost fell, but also for playing along to save her from embarrassment. Little did she know the man frowned hearing this, he was being completely sincere. Well, anyway, Adele, don't drink so much next time. It was dangerous, Jillian said as he prepared to leave, but just before leaving, he heard Adele murmur, I couldn't let you drink all that alone. After all, you are my man's. Perhaps it was the alcohol. Adele knew her words were extremely ambiguous, but somehow she found herself strangely anticipating Jillian's reaction. Hearing this, the man suddenly came before her and cupped her face for a kiss. Wife is drunk. The man tried hard to resist his mischievous urges, but unexpectedly she actively teased him. In the misty night, he placed a tender and passionate kiss. When the soft sensation came, Adele felt electricity course through her body. The commander is really impulsive. They would surely walk down the aisle together, but Gil chose the second sister instead. Jillian caressed her lips with relish. No, I've never been more rational than now. They lingered intimately for a long while after. Unlike their sweet moment, Nola was now in a terrible state. She believed her sister misunderstood that she wanted to fight for inheritance, so hastily married an actor. And his background was unknown, likely a con man after their money, so she strongly instigated Jairus to help find flaws in their relationship. The next morning, Adele was still immersed in last night's passionate kiss, thinking how close they came to losing control. When she learned that Jillian had gone hunting with her father early in the morning, she asked her maid to help her dress up, preparing to welcome their return. But upon seeing him, her face turned red and her heart raced. Mind filled with their intimate moments, yet Jillian seemed deeply troubled because after his future father-in-law dragged him through an exhausting hunt. He was told Adele hated smelling blood early in the morning, following the principle of reciprocity and not wanting to displease his wife. I'm unhappy because I saw blood early morning, but as long as Uncle is happy, Jillian successfully shifted the blame to the Count. At this moment, an idea occurred to Adele. Then Nola and Jairus came together asking to join their meal, but before dining, Jairus suddenly proposed to hold an early engagement ceremony with Nola. Adele watched speechlessly. Seeing these two were determined to oppose her, coincidentally, she and Jillian were about to mention this too. Hearing this, father squinted, ready to watch the show. After his initial shock, Jairus began working hard to gain trust, but this only displeased the Count. Jairus, no matter how capable you are, you can't bet on my eldest daughter becoming queen and then get together with my second daughter. If you want to do this, wait for my son Caden to return. The man had just confessed to Wolf's sister, then proposed to her sister, angering his future father-in-law since our bloodline attracts you so much. Wait for my son's return, you might like him too, but Caden's bloodthirsty brutality was well known. Jairus instantly cowered. The Count, not even finishing his meal, stood to leave. Everyone agreed the proposal should wait, except Jillian. Uncle, you haven't given me an answer yet. She asked the butler if her missing father had left any message. The butler said the master had sent a letter days ago, instructing them to make preparations upon his return. Oh dear, this blockhead is surprisingly eager about this matter. The Count smiled, asking him to give a proper reason. Unexpectedly, Jillian's words shocked everyone. Your daughter has done things she must take responsibility for with me. Using marriage as an excuse, she has repeatedly coveted my body and soul. The Count's face darkened upon hearing this. After all, the man before him was a heavyweight figure, yet someone dared to disrespect him, but the next second he realized, wait, that person is my daughter. Seeing the Count waver, Jillian added fuel to the fire. Known the Sergio family valued credibility and responsibility most, he targeted this point, requesting Adele to take responsibility for him soon. The woman wanted to explain but was interrupted by her father. He earnestly lectured that after indulgence, there must always be a price to pay. So he announced on the spot, they would hold the engagement ceremony tonight and the wedding in 3 days. Though the goal was achieved, Adele felt somewhat exhausted. So this is how rumors start. They had only kissed until now, nothing else had happened. They would hold the eldest daughter's wedding. Yet Jillian insisted that given how far their relationship had progressed, why was Adele still calling him Commander instead of his name, making the woman feel like she had committed a grave error? However, there was one thing Adele still couldn't understand. Why was Jillian so eager to marry her? It didn't seem very beneficial to him, but before her doubts could be answered, she was nearly seduced by his devastatingly handsome face. She had to quickly change the subject, mentioning the need to send invitations. She wondered why at such a time Jillian had never mentioned his parents unexpectedly. The man suddenly froze, then briefly stated his parents were gone and his siblings weren't worth mentioning. He added that everyone has their own untold hardships, clearly not wanting Adele to pursue the topic. This saddened the woman. The passionate rich girl had finally melted the cold. Aloof holy night, only to discover it was all her wishful thinking. She had shown all her cards and true feelings, yet the man remained reserved. Weighing pros and cons, Adele couldn't help feeling disappointed. Only this way could she maintain her heir qualification. And the letter was delivered by the second daughter. Adele, who had always been meticulous, had been outmaneuvered by the sister she looked down upon. Right, we're just in a contractual relationship. It was my fault, seeing her like this, Jillian panicked. He quickly grabbed her hand, begging for some time, but Adele withdrew her hand. What they needed now wasn't explanations, but space. Besides, she needed to prepare for the evening banquet. Just as she was about to leave, the man suddenly came up behind her, whispering in her ear. In 3 days, you'll know who benefits more from this, leaving this puzzling statement. They each went about their business. However, what Adele didn't expect was, even though it was just an engagement banquet, its luxury far exceeded her imagination. The banquet hall was filled with crystal sculptures. Having spent time in the temple, her first thought was how wasteful this was. She immediately clasped her hands, praying for divine forgiveness for her father. Originally, father and daughter were joking around, creating a harmonious atmosphere. She clenched her fists, thinking of simply the elder sister wanted to kill her younger sister. But then her cousin came to cause trouble. The man appeared humble but was actually quite calculating. Fortunately for the battle-hardened Adele, he was still no match for her, though usually accustomed to such situations. Today she felt particularly exhausted seeing this. Her father tentatively asked Adele, "If I said you don't need to live so tiredly, what would you do?" These words instantly ignited his daughter's temper through all these obstacles she'd faced. Her only goal was to inherit the merchant guild. Her father's words seemed to suggest giving up, but the guild meant more to her than life itself. She would never let it go. However, as she said this, Adele suddenly thought of Jillian. Today's guests were all from her side while he was all alone. Would he feel lonely because of this? She could accept her sister stealing her fiancé, but she couldn't accept. Her father teased, "How come? Wasn't your life only about the guild with nothing else mattering? Yet you're worried about him." Adele wanted to object, but the next moment, Jillian made a dazzling entrance. Men looked on enviously. Women were moved to tears by his handsomeness. Many ladies wanted to learn Adele's secrets for catching such a man. The rich girl had washed 9.999 plates to chase after her husband, but when relatives asked about it, she could only mysteriously say it was all God's will. She didn't mind personally, but had to maintain the family's face. However, the relatives wouldn't let it go. At the crucial moment, Jillian stepped in to save his wife. He praised how Adele, during her time at the temple, was diligent and humble, hardworking and uncomplaining. "How could I not love such a person?" He held her hand, gazing at her lovingly. Others looked on envious, but a new question arose. Her sister taking away her right as heir. Money was more important than love. The maid beside her urged her to stay calm. What does Miss Adele like about the commander? Jillian, who had just cleverly helped his wife, now fell silent, awaiting her answer. But at this moment, Cousin Meal came to cause trouble again. Using drunkenness as a disguise, he openly mocked Adele, someone as materialistic as her. How could she love someone who had nothing but looks? Nola spoke up nearby to stop him, telling the cousin to stop making trouble, but he turned around. If Adele wasn't so greedy, always wanting to control everything, he would be better off than now. The two worked in tandem, trying to force Adele into the most embarrassing situation. But the woman suddenly laughed, "Not to mention that all your combined assets are less than his pocket money. What right do you have to discuss tag?" The hotels and clothing stores his fiancée Meal now manages were originally under his name, such an ungrateful person since he shows no mercy. "Don't blame me," Adele pretended to be hurt, asking her father for an extra engagement gift to take back what should have been hers. The woman picked up her documents and continued reviewing them. Love was never essential to her anyway. Inheriting the family business was the top priority. They could complain when the count returned, but Adele knew well her father's cold and heartless nature. Hearing this, the man instantly broke down. He even looked ready to get physical, but the next second, guards removed him from the banquet hall. The spectators immediately understood the situation. Those who were just coldly observing now began flattering her. However, Adele wasn't interested in this. She warned that this would happen to those who didn't know their place. Though Adele maintained her composure, she was mentally and physically exhausted, so she chose to leave early, venting her emotions in the courtyard. Just thinking about how Miel dared disrespect Jillian made her want to kill him unexpectedly. Jillian followed her out, overhearing her dark thoughts. He was once the ice knight, but now he'd become clingy, always wanting to be close to his wife, seeing Jillian rush over anxiously. His messy hair unlike his usual style, Adele knew he was worried about her, but she felt an inexplicable sadness. If they were closer, she could help fix his hair, Besides that, thinking about how aggressive she'd been towards her cousin and her dark thoughts about killing him. He only cared about benefits. All witnessed by Jillian made Adele even sadder. You must be very disappointed in me, but the man just found it strange. Why would she think that? That guy was clearly the troublemaker. If Adele had swallowed her pride, then he would have been disappointed. Moreover, if it were me, I wouldn't just kill him. I would skin him from head to toe or tie him to a bomb. These words made Adele laugh out loud. At the same time, she found the answer to a certain question in her heart. She liked Jillian. Is that so? Her fingers gently brushed his cheek. I like you just the way you are, no matter what happens. You're never disappointed in me, always firmly walking towards me, although the later words were written in Bagel's letter. The man, feeling her sincere emotions, was completely captivated. He grabbed his wife's resisting hand and with a deep voice asked her to call his name, faced with such temptation. If he learned his younger daughter stole his elder daughter's man, he'd only say, well, the younger daughter is quite capable. The woman's eyes gradually became dreamy, allowing the handsome man's face to slowly approach hers, but at that moment, her possessive and Yandir brother Cadden returned. His face darkened as he saw them. What's going on here? Ignoring his sister's protests, he drew his sword. Ready to kill the man who dared harass her, Adele panicked. It's not what you think. He's my husband, your brother-in-law. However, her explanation only made things worse. At the mention of husband, Cadden entered rage mode. With lightning speed, he sidestepped past her and launched a downward strike. Adele shouted for Jillian to dodge. But surprisingly, the man didn't move. He blocked all of her brother's attacks. And when Cadden attacked again, he simply broke his sword. But Cadden's fighting spirit hadn't diminished. He pulled out a dagger to continue. Adele couldn't take it anymore. At this moment, the calm Adele had a sudden inspiration. She slapped him hard, the brother's obsessive love for his sister, wanting to kill her future brother-in-law, but unexpectedly, for that man's sake, his sister had struck him. Cadden was in disbelief. Sister, how could you hit me? But Adele grew angrier. Because of you, I almost became a widow on my engagement day. How dare you ask? I allowed you to learn swordsmanship so you could eliminate threats and protect yourself. Protect yourself? But how has Jillian threatened you? If you continue acting this way, I'll never forgive you and never see you again. Leaving her pitiful brother behind, Adele prepared to leave with Jillian's support. At that moment, the Count who was looking for them happened to witness this awkward scene between the three. Though not knowing what had happened, he said, "You Brad, so you know how to come home?" Father and son began arguing loudly without dignity. Adele felt both speechless and puzzled. She had anticipated Cadden would cause trouble upon discovering her engagement, so when he destroyed his father's economic bridge and prepared to return home. I'll find a different marriage partner. She had given him new orders to rebuild the bridge. Logically, he shouldn't be here. Suddenly, she turned to Nola, who had just arrived. Sister, are you all right? Did I do something wrong? Adele suddenly understood it was her doing. No wonder he had dressed up for the banquet today, probably wanting to see how chaotic the engagement ceremony could become, and just as Adele had suspected, a few days later, the messenger Cherry was found, though they found him barely alive. As usual, Nola, before being questioned, took the initiative. All right, I apologize, sister, I'm sorry. I just wanted to bring Cadden here as a surprise. Was I being unnecessary? The commander seems quite shocked. Such surprise made Adele pout and act coquettishly. Jillian was indeed shocked, but not because of Cadden. Three-legged toads might be rare, but two-legged men are everywhere. He didn't expect to get angry. Speaking of anger, little sister, should I have Cadden contribute to your engagement ceremony too? How about I create a scene? The sister who stole her sister's ex and ruined her engagement ceremony with her current one. Yet the older sister isn't angry and even cares about her. What do you really want? I can give it to you at your engagement ceremony. Adele's kindness was unexpected to Nola. He was stunned for 3 seconds, then put on his professional smile again, saying his sister had given him everything. What more could he ask for? Though he said this, he didn't look happy at all. Adele reminded him that like this, Jairus will be sad too. They say gentle knives cut the deepest. Nola fell into rare silence, forcing a smile before leaving the room. If before father returns, I can find someone taller and more handsome than Gil, richer, more capable, and with better character or reserved gentleman. Indeed, sister and the commander looked like a real couple. Perhaps he hadn't noticed himself, but there was some envy in him. Adele had noticed this point and knowing his days were numbered felt some pity for him. She felt it unnecessary to dirty her hands dealing with him. Besides, the urgent matter was solving Cadden's problem. His scene that day had troubled their father greatly. Adele worried they might kill each other under the pretense of hunting, so she specially asked Tyrion to accompany them. But unexpectedly, father had to leave midway, though her brother had been warned. He still couldn't accept the reality of his sister getting married, especially since this guy's background was unknown. Even during hunting, he just stood by watching. What kind of man is that? More infuriating was that no matter how he mocked and ridiculed, Gillian could calmly counter everything. I'll have every reason to tell father that I dumped Gil and chose someone else, but as she listed the conditions, Adele deflated. Where could she find such a person? Just when the atmosphere was extremely tense, Adele's appearance instantly extinguished their hostility. However, Cadden was covered in blood. He had lost the basic courtesy of dismounting for his sister. But when Adele saw the hunter lying on the ground, he immediately became proud. Saying this was a gift for his sister, looking just like a cat who had caught a mouse, Adele felt helpless. It was all her fault when they were young to build confidence in the abused Cadden and cultivate his self-reliance whenever he hunted. The brother and brother-in-law were jealous of each other. But one word from the man ended the conflict before it even began. When Adele suggested talking to her brother alone, Gillian left without hesitation, but before leaving, he deliberately emphasized their sibling relationship. Infuriating Cadden, after he left, her brother frantically expressed his dissatisfaction. He knew his sister was rushing to marry to counter Nola, who wanted to seize the family headship. The maid worried too. Such an ideal man might only exist in the church's holy society. He could understand that, but he couldn't comprehend why his sister seemed to genuinely like that guy. This was unacceptable to him. Hearing this, Adele's expression changed. Her brother had caused trouble at her engagement ceremony, which she hadn't even addressed yet. Now he dared to question her actions. Know your limits. And this is the last time you'll speak of my husband so casually. After the warning, Adele returned to her gentle self. She helped wipe the blood from her brother's face, explaining why she chose Gillian. He's given me so much, and showed me that in this world besides money there are other more precious things, so stop causing trouble from now on. However, Cadden remained unsatisfied seeing this. Adele threatened to make him the best man. That finally silenced her brother. These words instantly awakened something in Adele. The next day, she boarded a carriage to search for a husband. Seeing it was getting late, Adele prepared to take the two gentlemen home to cheer up her brother. She pretended to be troubled. What should I do with your gift? The naive brother felt a bit guilty. Just then Gillian returned. His spotless appearance contrasted sharply with Cadden's bloodstained state. Despite just being lectured by his sister, Cadden couldn't help but make sarcastic remarks about his brother-in-law. Angered, Adele pulled her man to leave unexpectedly. A small squirrel emerged from Gillian's sleeve. Its soft, adorable appearance was very endearing. She immediately became overjoyed. Gillian's move was undoubtedly successful. Cadden was about to explode with anger. He found it increasingly suspicious. Being reborn into the Empire's wealthiest oil lab merchant group, as the eldest daughter and heir, she was very satisfied because in her previous life, she was just an ordinary girl. On the way, the maid asked if she was serious. Adele replied seriously, I must inherit the family business, so I must bring back a husband, but the maid, looking at the abundant gold, asked why she needed so much money to find a husband. Who exactly was that guy? Not only was father polite and confiding in him, but his sister would also show unguarded smiles before him. Cadden felt this couldn't continue. He must investigate the man's identity, even if his sister would surely punish him when she found out, but this was better than watching her smile so innocently before such a suspicious person. Meanwhile, in the capital, His Highness the Prince was anxiously searching for his long-missing brother. His sister was getting married, but the groom wasn't him. This made the sister-complex brother contemplate killing his brother-in-law. Little did he know that the seemingly ordinary brother-in-law was actually the Empire's noble crown prince. The man had abandoned wealth, fame, and power, yet got engaged to a wealthy merchant's daughter. The second prince's first reaction was that this must be nonsense, but the woman beside him thought differently, now that the emperor's condition was worsening and the crown prince's whereabouts unknown. Many eyes in the palace were fixed on that position, so even if it was just a rumor. Adele's reason was very sufficient. I can't go empty-handed to delay the Count's return. They couldn't miss any chance to find the Crown Prince. Speaking of this, the woman volunteered. Let me verify the truth for you. Perhaps everyone is curious about her identity now. Actually, she was Chloe, the novel's female protagonist, a woman who, with her beauty and wisdom, rose from an underestimated duke's adopted daughter to become the queen of social circles. However, this time, while seemingly helping the second prince, she had her own hidden agenda. 2 days after this, Adele finally reached her wedding day. Everyone at the Count's residence was extremely busy. To prevent her brother from causing more trouble, Adele specifically asked her father to lock him up. Moreover, she found time in her busy schedule to select the most suitable gift for Jillian, but before Adele could rejoice for even 2 seconds. The maid first informed the Count that a priest had been invited for the wedding, then hesitantly told her that young Master Cadden had escaped. The first news Adele could barely tolerate, but upon hearing the latter, her plan to maintain grace and perfection on her wedding day was instantly overwhelmed by anger. She specifically asked her brother Cadden to tell a small lie, having him help destroy the bridge her father must cross to return. Putting on steel gloves, she set out to capture her rebellious brother. Where did the escaped Cadden go? The answer was Jillian's room. He still didn't believe the man simply liked his sister, so he came to confront him. If you dare hurt my sister even slightly, I'll skin you alive. As he spoke, he attempted to ambush him to show he was serious. Just then, Adele's voice came from outside. Cadden instantly fell silent. While worrying what to do, Jillian loosened his previously arranged collar. The brother wanted to kill his brother-in-law, the sister wanted to kill him, but unexpectedly in this crisis, his brother-in-law stood up for him just as Adele was about to burst into the room, as she was about to catch the escaped Cadden. Jillian appeared before her with his chest buttons undone. The maid wondered why not just let the young master bring someone back instead. This made the previously furious woman instantly turn into a gentle lamb. Her eyes didn't know where to look, seeing him curious about the steel gloves on her hands. Adele explained they were for disciplining her brother, but it seemed he wasn't here. Then Jillian thoughtfully offered to help remove her gloves, advising her not to wear them next time, not because they didn't match her dress, but because he thought hitting someone with these wouldn't hurt much. Here I want to say you're quite mischievous, but Adele didn't think too much about it. After all, the wedding was about to begin. They needed to hurry, but Jillian still had a small matter to handle, so he made an excuse to fix his appearance and returned to his room alone. Cadden tried to slip away but was suddenly blocked by a small knife. Brother-in-law, remember to take your belongings. Jillian both warned and claimed his territory. I will take good care of my wife. At this moment, Adele's remembering her empty and Yandir brother. Meanwhile, Adele watched her father rushing to her side. She was utterly speechless. This extravagance should have limits, but the Count's efforts were actually for Jillian, creating a familiar environment for him, so he wouldn't feel awkward being alone. Understanding this, Adele said no more. When she saw Jillian in his groom's attire, her heart began to flutter. Noticing her father was about to give orders, she quickly went forward and took the man's hand. The onlookers burst into laughter, while also remarking how well-matched this heavenly couple was, but Adele was preoccupied. After all, only they knew this was just a contract marriage, though this was what she wanted. Why did she feel somewhat lost? Since this marriage had already received the Archbishop's blessing, no other procedures were needed, so they proceeded directly to exchanging reins. Who always maintained murderous intent toward any women near him. If he knew about this matter, he would only ask her how she wanted them dead. However, just as the officiant was halfway through his lines, Jillian suddenly interrupted. Everyone present was startled. Adele was also puzzled. Was there something wrong with the rain she prepared for him? Unexpectedly, he asked, "Didn't you want the sun?" When a woman said she wanted the sun in the sky, the man actually delivered it at their wedding. A holy light appeared from afar. We seem to be a bit late, led by Saint Rebecca. People from the Great Temple arrived in grand procession, though Adele had wielded great influence in business for years. This was her first time seeing such a spectacle, most surprisingly. Her former arch-enemy was here and was ordered to deliver their wedding tokens. It was the sacred relic known as the sun fragment in the Great Temple, under everyone's amazed gaze. Jillian took his beautiful bride's hand and placed that ring on her finger. Though Cadden appeared fierce to outsiders, he was as docile as a big wolf dog before his sister. Adele felt like she was in a dream, but one thing she was certain of, she seemed to have fallen in love with this man of action. At the end of the wedding, the couple shared a sweet embrace and kiss. But beneath this happy atmosphere, a certain someone was fuming with anger. And there was also a kid saying, "This is impossible. Why is that errand girl kissing the captain at the banquet?" Adele thanked Rebecca for coming since last time when she helped resolve the issue with the unscrupulous supplier. The woman had let go of her prejudices against her. However, as the fortune of salvation and healing, Rebecca keenly sensed something unusual about the city. It was filled with the aura of death. Adele immediately thought of Nola. While marveling at Rebecca's impressive abilities, she wanted to ask for another favor. But Rebecca could tell she was up to no good and stood up to leave. Soon, Adele's group arrived at the church. But before achieving her goal, Adele wouldn't let her go. "You must use your abilities, aren't you the fortune of salvation?" What Adele wanted to do here, let's put aside for now. After seeing Rebecca off, she noticed Jillian had disappeared. Just as she was about to look for him, the sulking kid from the wedding appeared. The boy named Nero had a crush on Adele's. Previously at the Great Temple, she had tricked him, saying he could marry someone he liked if he became a knight. But seeing Adele marry the captain today, his dreams were shattered and he wanted to quit everything in anger. Adele just found it amusing, coaxing him like a cat while asking about Jillian's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, she learned he was alone with Nola right now. On her sister's wedding night, the younger sister secretly sought out her brother-in-law. Unfortunately, the bishop who could help arrange matches wasn't there. Adele didn't want to return empty-handed. She had previously stolen her sister's ex with her scheming ways and now wanted to use the same trick again, disrupting her sister's relationship with her current husband. If Adele misunderstood and flew into a rage, her goal would be achieved, so she subtly implied about her sister, not only fickle in relationships, but also calculating in business, and spread rumors about her frequent private meetings with men. Hearing this, Jillian interrupted his sister-in-law. "Adele has mentioned you several times." Noelle's heart skipped a beat but still tried to act coy. "She probably didn't say anything nice about me." Jillian coldly replied that he couldn't remember at all, "Perhaps because I'm not interested in you. Or because when Adele speaks, I only have eyes for her, but you seem overly concerned about me." Nola, caught in her schemes, became flustered when her handkerchief fell. Jillian cut it in half with his sword. It was both a reminder and a warning to stop her little tricks. At that moment, Adele rushed in, sensing the tense atmosphere. She asked if something had happened between them. Nola lied, saying she just came to ask her brother-in-law for help. However, Adele, in a joking manner, exposed her ulterior motives. So she knocked on another door. Unexpectedly, it was pitch black inside. Then the couple left behind a seething Nola, preparing to leave together. But before leaving, Adele had something to give to her dear sister. She raised her hand high as if about to strike her sister. But the next second, a black bird flew onto her hand. Noel's face turned pale instantly. This was the messenger bird she had previously arranged to have killed, and the favor Adele asked of Rebecca was to resurrect this little one. She placed the black bird on her sister's shoulder, her voice ice cold. "This time, take good care of it." Seeing the shocked woman's paralyzed expression, Adele felt triumphant just as she was thinking about getting a good night's sleep. Jillian's voice from behind made her suddenly realize, wait, we're married now. So does that mean by then he had already come up behind her and embraced her? Adele's heart pounded, thinking about how they were only in a contract marriage. Her biggest dream was to be a rich second generation, to experience the thrill of being wealthy and fighting for inheritance. There was only a deep voice accompanied by faint echoes. She felt they shouldn't be so intimate, but Jillian was serious. "You think you're the only one who won't let go of what's yours on their wedding night?" The husband wanted to be intimate with his wife but was rejected. After all, it was a contract marriage. There's no need to make it seem so real, but in reality, the man truly loved her otherwise. He wouldn't have given the sun fragment as a wedding token. In Jillian's view, no one was more suitable to own this ring than her, as she had enough wealth not to sell it and would treasure it forever. Only a doubt, this made her realize clearly for the first time that she was born into a wealthy family. However, for the archbishop to easily give away such a precious item, he must truly care for them. Jillian's expression suddenly darkened. "It's not just because it was my mother's possession, more precisely. To inherit the family business, the count's daughter had embarked on a journey to find a husband, and now she seemed to see the finish line. It should have belonged to my mother because the archbishop was his godfather. And he probably thought, I need to give you at least this token to be worthy of you. Adele laughed, surprised that Jillian would think he wasn't worthy of her. When he was so perfect, suddenly she remembered something. No, the captain's only flaw must be that. She remembered when she was drunk before, passionately kissing Jillian that night when nothing happened after all. Plus, there were rumors that the holy knights of the Great Temple had no desires in that regard, so Adele naturally assumed that Jillian must also be incapable. But since he already had such looks and physique, asking for more would be too much. To ease her guilty conscience, Adele asked Jillian if there was anything he wanted. She could fulfill any request. Unexpectedly, after thinking for a moment, he said, "What I want might trouble you." Adele thought he was underestimating her. The man before her had white hair at his temples. Was there anything in this world she couldn't handle? Jillian calmly stated, "What I need most now is an heir." Actually, he was subtly expressing his desire for intimacy with his wife. But Adele, caught in her misunderstanding, didn't avoid it. After her shock, she firmly stated she would help him find medicine for that condition, just that they couldn't let her father and Kane know about this, or there would be chaos. Jillian was confused about what his wife was saying, handsome and charming with a perfect body but unfortunately impotent, unable to make his wife happy. But the woman wasn't disappointed, instead optimistically saying, "I will work hard with you." This almost short-circuited Jillian's brain. It took him a while to realize what she had misunderstood. He sighed, touching his forehead, but thinking of Adele's promise earlier, "You said you'd work hard with me. Don't regret it later." As he spoke, he slowly approached her. As fireworks burst in the sky, they shared a long, lingering kiss until they were slightly breathless. Seeing the man still wanting to continue, Adele gently pushed him, trying to make him stop, but unexpectedly, Jillian suddenly lifted her up. Under the sunlight, he looked like a deity descended to earth. "Yes, we should stop because it's too narrow here." Then he placed her on the bed. He removed his clothes. "My lady, now who do you think benefits more from this? What follows his premium content?" Let's skip ahead. When morning came, Adele had just turned over. When a deep voice came from behind, "Are you awake?" Jillian had been watching her for who knows how long. Smiling, seeing you first thing in the morning, Adele glared at him with flushed cheeks, feeling somehow deceived. He was supposed to be incapable, but last night he was quite vigorous, but Jillian was innocent. His wife had believed the rumor that all holy knights were impotent in reality. They only took vows of chastity before marriage from the archbishop. Breaking it would bring divine punishment, so that previous night when Adele was drunk, Jillian hadn't gone all the way because no matter what, he didn't want the woman to be tainted by anything bad and wouldn't let anything harm her. Who understands, folks? He truly loves her so much. At this moment, Adele was deeply touched by Jillian's little gestures. Adele was completely stunned until the man's repeated calls awakened her from her daze before the man could introduce himself. Her face couldn't help but show a shadow of a smile. She actively leaned in and kissed the man's lips, but ended up being pinned down by him. "My lady, please don't test me so early in the morning. I barely managed to control myself yesterday." All right, everyone knows you're a strong man now. This sour smell of love, I can smell it through the screen, but it wasn't just his wife who was caught in misunderstanding. There was also his lovely father-in-law. The wife mistakenly thought her husband was impotent, but on their wedding night, the man proved his vigor through actions. The next morning, he wanted to be intimate with his wife again, but was interrupted by his father-in-law who wanted a private chat. It was because the emperor was critically ill, saying he wanted to see the crown prince no matter what, so he had the second prince search for him. Well, at this point, Jillian's background was completely revealed. His birth mother was a noble lady in name only. The emperor married her despite family opposition but couldn't give her happiness. Instead, after giving birth to their child, she passed away unable to bear the cold words of the palace. Adele, through clever observation, deduced his identity from various small details. As for Jillian, although he was named crown prince, he was abandoned in a separate palace since childhood. Neglected by all, even when he ran away later, the emperor didn't take any measures. Now he's dying and suddenly remembers having such a son. I don't know what game he's playing. After understanding the situation, Jillian firmly stated, "I won't go back." This answer was within the count's expectations. After all, this was their family matter. He couldn't say much about it, but you haven't told Adele yet. She hates being deceived the most. Jillian immediately objected. "I didn't mean to deceive her. It's just those memories aren't pleasant, not suitable to share with others." But the Count said, regardless of how Jillian feels, he just hopes Adele won't get caught up in troubles she can't handle. Knight Commander, pleased to meet you. Please take care of me. Besides this, he had something else to remind his son-in-law. He coughed awkwardly twice. I heard you didn't leave the room before noon. I understand your feelings, but it's better to be careful at first. After all, a child would be precious to both families. This time, Jillian immediately understood what his father-in-law had misunderstood, but he suddenly wanted to tease him, saying since father-in-law cares so much about children, he should work harder to give him a grandchild soon. The Count was dumbfounded. Hadn't Jillian been constantly saying before that Adele should take responsibility for him? Who knew the man would look innocent and say, I never said that, we have a child. The father-in-law finally realized that he, who had dominated the business world for years, had been outmaneuvered by this young man. Jillian was quite pleased with himself. However, just as he left, he ran into the furious curse. After going out and coming back, his sister suddenly had a husband. This made the protective brother very unhappy. He kept looking for trouble every few days, and this time he actually found something. Her words startled the man. He carefully asked how she knew. He discovered that the man was actually from a noble family, but the family only flourished for 2 months before quickly declining. Besides this, he couldn't find any other information but for a declining family. How could its history be so clean? So he reasonably suspected this was fabricated by someone, thinking he had caught the man's weakness. He was very happy not knowing that someone was actually his own father, so Jillian completely ignored his provocations. He just didn't expect his brother-in-law to be so eager to bring him down. It seems he was truly his sister's die-hard fan, and because of this, he had been tolerating his impudence. But if anyone else wanted to bring him down earlier, it was mentioned that the second prince to find the crown prince sent a woman named Chloe to investigate. Originally, she had planned to intercept Jillian before his marriage to Adele to directly replace the woman, but somehow the bridge to the Count's house was destroyed, so this plan had to be abandoned. After that, she focused on Adele. Little did he know that with just one glance, she not only saw his background but also noticed he seemed new here. The woman was said to be not only beautiful but also capable and very resourceful by her own efforts. She had surpassed the already dominant southern oil lamps. Developing to a point of overwhelming power, she thought the crown prince had found quite a formidable backing, but this backing would soon be insufficient because she would fall. But why would the woman do this? We'll talk about that later. Anyway, to deal with Adele, she turned her attention to Nora. From what she learned about the Count's family relationships, the youngest brother was very close to his eldest sister, but was like enemies with the second sister. And under the eldest sister's shadow, the younger sister was like a nobody. Although she always appeared incompetitive, the perceptive Chloe still noticed Nora. She felt there wasn't as much sisterly love as appeared on the surface. And indeed, it was as she thought. This time, Nora was upset because her sister was getting all the attention. Seeing girls all over the street copying Adele's fashion, she wanted to live somewhere else. Otherwise, by now, young ladies would have stormed the church, dragging him home as a husband. Out of sight just as she was feeling frustrated, Nora stopped right there for her sister's sake. The younger sister was always around, but this time he failed. Earlier, he had encouraged his cousin to be the vanguard, resulting in a complete loss. Now realizing he had been deceived, he immediately confronted his sister. At first, Nora was indeed startled, but after calming down, she started playing innocent, claiming she knew nothing about it and even tried to shift the blame to her sister. But the enraged cousin wouldn't fall for it this time. Just as the atmosphere reached its peak tension, suddenly an unknown object was pointed at the back of his head. How shameless, a man doing such things in broad daylight. The woman threatened the cousin that if he continued harassing, she would call for help. The man could only leave grudgingly, and so, because of this intervention, the two became good friends. One slip into water and her dream became reality. Yes, a husband looking at his handsome face, hearing his steady voice. But what Nora didn't know was that the woman's approach wasn't out of kindness. In fact, she would be the path to her downfall. And Adele couldn't have imagined that in trying to avoid getting involved in the plot, she deliberately avoided doing business in this place. Yet because her husband was the crown prince, it attracted the female lead's arrival. When she had read the novel before, she felt this woman wasn't foolish. Although Nora was very unlikable in the original story, many of her evil deeds happened after meeting the female lead Chloe, who secretly instigated her. In the end, the female lead married the male lad and became empress. While Nora became an irredeemable villainess, her life counting down to its end, Adele thought compared to her hateful sister. The female lead was far more evil, so she never took Nora too seriously. Little did she know this oversight would cause her to stumble badly soon after. Since the conditions for inheriting the family business were met, the Count began preparing to step down. Adele suddenly had a grand idea. She came here hoping to find someone similar to her previous love, but now she had different thoughts. But before that, he wanted to give Adele a trial. Recently, a piece of land he had waited for was finally for sale. It was the most prosperous land in the south. Upon hearing this news, Adele was overjoyed, and her father wanted her to personally secure this piece of land. This would test the woman's abilities. "I look forward to your performance," Adele confidently replied. "I won't disappoint you." After discussing business, her father asked, "Why are you still standing here?" "Daughter, I thought with such good news, you'd run to hug my son-in-law." These words made the woman blush as she retorted, "Father, not all men in the world are obsessed with physical intimacy. You know, if you don't believe me, we can make a bet." The daughter made a bet with her father, betting that her husband was an ascetic saint whose mind was never filled with impure thoughts. Little did she know, the man was currently frustrated with his desires, transformed into a madman. Frantically chopping trees in the forest, his single subordinates couldn't understand why. On their wedding night, the commander seemed to have the whole world in his hands. Why was he so successful at such a young age? How could he now speak of marriage like this? But they didn't know, after spending that night with Adele, the next day she got her period. This made the man extremely uncomfortable. He finally understood why holy knights before entering the temple had to take a vow of purity. Because if you'd never done it before, you might be able to endure. But now his whole body felt suppressed. However, one problem after another arose. His subordinates informed him that next week was the great temple ceremony. Many noble guests from other countries would attend. The archbishop insisted he return to host personally. Hearing this, Jillian angrily hacked at the bushes again. The red-haired knight, being tactless, thought the commander simply couldn't bear to leave his wife, fearing other men might pursue her in his absence. He thoughtlessly suggested that if anything happened, her brother-in-law could handle it. Becoming the church's representative, thinking this, Adele calmed her heart. These words completely triggered Jillian's fury. In his anger, he sliced a mountain in half, but as he turned to leave, a small squirrel suddenly appeared before him. This reminded him of his wife's smile. Instantly, all his unpleasantness vanished. He took his men and hurried back, but thinking about it, he still couldn't bear being apart from his wife, so he secretly left instructions, allowing them to find some volunteers to help, preferably those skilled in foreign languages, fishing, and adaptability. The implication was clear. He wanted them to bring his wife along, so the next day the two came to Adele's office. Before this, Jillian was jealous that his celibate wife was busy working with her former fiancé every day. He was quite upset about it. He also tried to probe what made her so devoted to work. Unexpectedly, she said it concerned his matters. He was hesitating whether to mention the volunteer matter. She decided to probe further. "I'm Adele, and I don't know how to address you." When his subordinates came to ask, he couldn't help but feel hopeful, but unsurprisingly, Adele refused. The redhead, unwilling to give up, wanted to persuade her more, but unexpectedly the commander said, "1 second is enough." The man was quite calculating. He wanted to bring his wife on the business trip, but instead of asking her directly, he encouraged his subordinates to suggest it, but when his wife refused, his subordinates wanted to persuade her more. "Enough, didn't my wife say she's busy? Why are you still forcing her?" Well played, turning against his own men. "I call that expertise." Then he transformed into a devoted husband, putting on a face of complete consideration for his wife. His subordinates were stunned by this display, and this move successfully won his wife's favor. "I didn't expect you to respect my work so much." Jillian was considering maybe he shouldn't return to the temple at all. The man politely answered, "Giulio." Adele asked again, "You look so young, must be about my brother's age." After all, he really didn't want his wife spending every day with her ex. However, learning that man was about to go bankrupt, he finally felt relieved and changed his mind. The couple looked forward to meeting again. Adele had already successfully taken over the merchant group, but what she didn't know at the time was, the beautiful future she dreamed of was almost ruined by her sister. After spending some time with Chloe, Nola had considered her a close friend. In the past, when people compared her to her sister, they'd say she had nothing but kindness, but this woman kept affirming and supporting her, believing she deserved to have greater ambitions. Thus, under the other's sweet offensive, she carelessly revealed her sister's secret, the experience of healing horrific injuries. Hearing this, Chloe regretted her daughter's actions. If she had stolen the jade pendant, she could have certainly caused trouble for Adele. Now it's time to explain why she wanted to do that, actually. Chloe had always wanted to be empress. She'd use any means to climb to her current position and build good relations with the second prince. However, the man had no interest in inheriting the thrones. He only wanted to find his brother. Though Tyrion had interest in the throne, he was after all the crown prince. The man thought she was criticizing his youth, so he frowned and said, "I'm 27. And even if he remained passive, those around him wouldn't let things be. Plus, as the Holy Knight's commander, she couldn't remove him. So she had to cut off his path to power, starting with his backing, which was Adele's family. And now she finally saw her chance, first with sweet talk, successfully winning over her brother-in-law and working with Nola against Adele, but don't forget, the woman still had a protective brother by her side. Chloe then said to her daughter, "He listens to your sister so much. If he interferes," before she finished, Nola smiled slightly. "I have my ways for that." Once he was an untouchable, ascetic ice mountain, but after marriage, his mind was filled only with thoughts of being close to his wife. Even in public, he would ask his wife for kisses. It was then that he learned his wife had made a bet with his father, betting that he was a saint who wasn't obsessed with physical intimacy. The stake was the ring on his finger. Hearing this, Gillian immediately pulled his wife into his arms and gave her a French kiss right in front of his father-in-law. After the onlookers recovered from their shock, he reluctantly handed the ring to his uncle. The woman rejoiced internally. She was 21 but then asked, being so handsome. This sweet display made everyone cry, but at that moment, someone locked in the tower was exploding with anger. Hayden's hands were bloody from smashing glass, but compared to his physical pain, watching his sister being taken away and being powerless to stop it hurt more. If it weren't for the restraining collar on his neck, last night when the man found him, warning him that during his absence, if he couldn't protect his sister, he would settle scores upon return. He would have killed him right there. He was grinding his teeth in hatred. Is today some special day? Why would second sister come here? Looking at Nola, who appeared before him, Hayden was not polite because he knew she definitely hadn't come with good intentions. Sure enough, she gave him the key to the restraining collar, then began sowing discord. Saying their sister had changed, her heart was completely occupied by another man. There would be no place for him, so shouldn't you find another path? You can't be sister's shadow forever. Your wife must be a great beauty too. Hearing this, Hayden laughed at how considerate his second sister was. He should properly show his gratitude. He first unlocked the restraint, but as he walked up to Nola, "Hold out your hand. I'll return the key to you." Seeing this scene, you might think Nola was foolish. Knowing Hayden held grudges about being restrained, yet still provoking him, asking for trouble, but actually it was intentional. She deliberately put herself at risk to achieve her goal of bringing her brother down, because the Count, though usually not saying much to his children, would absolutely not allow his sister to bring shame to the family. So after Hayden stabbed Nola, he was immediately imprisoned by his father, though both were his sisters. The brother was a loyal dog to his eldest sister, but a madman who wanted to kill his second sister. Because he knew from childhood his second sister was mad like him. Only he was openly mad, while she preferred to disguise herself as an angel while causing trouble in secret. So he looked down on her while she wanted to eliminate him, who saw through her. The man coldly replied that he had none. Adele, always an atheist, felt faith for the first time in her life. And this time, the woman succeeded upon learning that Hayden had stabbed Nola and was locked up by his father. Adele rushed to the scene immediately. Although known this incident was no small matter, and father would certainly not let it slide, when the woman saw Hayden, her heart sank unconsciously, and she started arguing with her father. Her instincts told her something was suspicious. How could father do this to his son without asking for the reason, and in this situation? To avoid implicating Adele, Hayden didn't mention how Nola provoked him about his sister. To stabilize the situation, after the woman snatched the chain's key from her father, she threw it directly into the fire. She asked father to give her 1 week. During this time, whether public opinion or rumors, she would handle everything. As for Hayden, I will deal with him personally. No one can touch what's mine carelessly. After leaving, Adele conducted an investigation. discovering things were indeed not simple as she thought. She brought flowers to Noel's room. Seeing jealous, she deliberately asked, "Sister, can you hear what I want to tell you?" Hearing this, Noel immediately felt guilty.